Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Happiness in Higher Ed podcast. My name is John Hill, and I use he, him pronouns. Today, I have Juan Sandoval here as a guest. And before we get into this podcast, I would like to say our mission statement. So, in a world that can be engulfed in darkness, we must shine bright and lead the change for a better future. As we continue to shape and challenge emerging adults' minds, it is also our duty to reflect and remember what makes us happy and why we continue to do the work that we do. So, without further ado, here is Juan Sandoval. And Juan Sandoval is a new student affairs professional working at Prairie View A&M University as a program coordinator for campus activities. Prairie View is one of two land-grant universities, and it is the second oldest public institution of higher learning in Texas. Juan is passionate about student development and helping students get in touch with their whole self. So Juan, would you like to add anything else to that?
No, I think you hit it on the nose, but yeah, hi, I'm Juan and I am here to have fun.
Got you. Okay, cool. So we're just going to get right into this. So first question that I have for you is, what was the reason you started to pursue a career in higher education?
I think my reasoning's a lot different than most people, and I'll give you a little backstory. So most people that I've heard and I've interacted with, they go straight off from college. It's something that they've done throughout their lives, and they did it in undergrad, so they feel like they are more suited to do it as a graduate student and then do it as a career. For me, it was a little bit different. I mean, during undergrad, I went to a very, very small school. I started biology with an emphasis in the medical sciences and a minor in visual arts. And I really thought my life was going to take me somewhere else, right? I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be a surgeon. I was going to go to medical school. I really had that 10-year plan, that whole shebang. Mm-hmm. But honestly, closer to my senior year, I really it was a time for me to reflect on where I was going. And I decided that maybe medical school wasn't the best for me, but I also decided that I didn't want to spend another 4 years in school, right? And so I said, I'm going to finish this degree. We're going to figure it out as we go. And once we get there, it'll be what it is. And, senior year came and went, and I still didn't know what to do. I found an opportunity, went to Disney World, worked there for 2 years, a year and a half maybe. But after that, I felt really, really unfulfilled, right? I had this biology degree, I had all this knowledge, and I had just graduated from college. I was still young. And it almost felt like I was trapped at Disney World. It felt like I wasn't going anywhere. There was no movement up, no movement down. It was lateral movements all the time, just transferring locations. And I actually picked up the phone and I called my mentor, and her name is Rocio Ayala. She's the director of the Multicultural Center at Western Illinois University, where both John and I did our undergrad or our graduate schools.
Grad school.
Sorry. And I basically told her, I said, I feel stuck. I don't know where I want to go. It feels like I have no purpose, and I did all this work and all this stuff in undergrad that I'm not getting to use now. And, she said, I don't want you to make a rash decision. I don't want you to jump on it right now, but I'm going to send you a website for a program that I think you'd be greatly suited for. You were a student affairs practitioner pretty much throughout your undergrad school. You did SGA, you did campus activities, you helped here, you helped there. You did a lot of things within student affairs themselves. And so I think there'll be a great opportunity for you. And at first I was like, oh, I don't want to do this. Go back to school. That's a lot. And to be honest, right now and throughout graduate school, those 2 years, I was also like, oh, why did I come back? I hate school. I don't want to be doing all these assignments. And so that was going through my head when I was first originally researching it. But the more that I looked into it, and the more that I researched it, and I looked at it, and said and looked at my life, I said, this is an opportunity. I've done it forever. I know what I'm doing, and it's something I can be great at. Maybe it's not something that I'm super, super duper passionate about, and something that I can find myself doing, for hundreds of years if I ever get to live that long. But it's something that I can do now that is going to fulfill me and give me that sort of wholeness that I need in my life to feel that I'm going somewhere and not necessarily stuck. And so that's why it's a little bit different, right? It's not necessarily that it was my hardcore passion, but because it was something that I put that was getting me somewhere down the line, and it was getting me out of this quote unquote unstuck place that I was. It was something that I was passionate to get to, right? So that end goal was a passion about it. But I kind of sort of fell in love with it a little bit as I go through grad school, and maybe not the theory or the research base of it, because that's very dense and it's a lot, but more so the student facing side of it, right? And interacting and getting to know them and helping them develop and helping them understand where they're at. That really interested me, and throughout my first year and even second year, it was what kept me going, and it was what gave me that passion, and sort of build that fire again in me, and ended up where I'm at now. So long-winded answer, but I think it's just a little bit different, and it's something that I'm kind of proud of, because I took a stance in my life when I was, how old am I? 26. So I was 24, 25, and I said, this isn't something for me, and I can reach something else, and this is my one stepping stone. And so here we are.
Got you. Yeah, no, because I remember that that was the conversation, because Juan and I were, during our CSP days for grad school, we were roommates. And
roommates.
Yes, and that was one of the conversations that we had, is that like I had thought that everyone else was coming out of coming out of undergrad and going straight into a grad program. But you had mentioned that like you were working out in Florida and like had done a lot of work at Walt Disney World. So I was just like, oh, this is really interesting. And I think I would also remember you in class saying that, like, I don't want to do these assignments. but I think that, like you had mentioned, the practical side of things, and like being in your assistantship and seeing that development from students was something that for sure kept me going. But I mean, as you just said, kept you going as well. So yeah. And you had mentioned, I mean, it's in your bio, but you had also said that you were at Prairie View, and that's a HBCU, so it's a historically Black college or university. So what has been your experience? Because I know that Western was a predominantly white institution. So was there a different switch to that, or like what was that experience like for you?
I mean, I think as a minoritized or a person of a minoritized identity, right? I'm Mexican, and there's at a PW that's not something that you see a whole lot of. I made it intentional to seek out different places to the places that I'd already been, right? So in my undergrad, it was a predominantly white institution. It was a small private school that, only white people would go, not just white people, but you know what I mean. It's predominantly white institution. And so after that, I went to Western, which was another PWI. And I had the opportunity during the summer of my first year, in our first and second of our years at grad school, to go visit University of California, Merced for the summer to do an internship with them. And that's a Hispanic service institution. So, the majority of their students are Hispanic. And that really gave me a different outlook and a different view of what a college experience can be and should be for people that look like me, right? And, with the resources they provided, the availability, the Spanish and English and all these other things that really encompass their education to make it that much better so they're able to succeed, equity, if you would. So when I came back to Western, I really made it intentional to search schools that were different, whether that meant they were smaller than what I was at, bigger than what I was at, or culturally different in the case of Prairie View, right? Or, population-wise different in the case of Prairie View. And it's been a great experience so far. It's been challenging only in the part of there's a lot of cultural aspects and a lot of respectful aspects that I'm not, necessarily, I didn't grow up with that are present here, because the majority of the population, both students and professional staff members, are African American. And so they understand, that's the culture that they've been rising up. So it's been hard to learn and to feel comfortable in participating in it, because I don't want it to be, I don't want it to come across as performative or appropriating, right? And so that's a very big thing that's in the back of my head that I'm always constantly thinking about. But because I do sort of work in this space and I am 100% of the time there, I feel like I am entitled to some of these cultural things. And so I'm able to participate and engage with them, right? And I'm able to ask questions and they're able to answer for me. And we're able to get to know each other a little bit more. And I think that's great. It's funny because whenever students come and see me for the first time, all they ever hear is my voice on the phone or talk to me through email. And so I can see the shock in their voice or the shock in their faces when they come and see me. And I'm not an African-American person because that's what they're used to. And that's something that's been passed on through them, year after year that they've been there. And so it's that initial shock is like, yeah, I can help you, and we're gonna get it together, and we're gonna understand each other, and I'm here for you. So it's been my experience so far.
Got you. Nice. Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you very, yeah. And okay, so the second question that I have, because I was like going off that the first question that I had, but the second one is, what makes you happy? And thinking about one thing from higher ed and another thing that personal.
Happiness is a tough emotion, I think, because it comes, for me at least, it comes in waves, right? This month I'm really excited about working out and continuing to get stronger and get better in my personal life. But I know last month I was really into baking, and the month before that I was really into cooking, or decorating my house. And so I find different things that I'm able to focus throughout my year and a half that I've been here with, that are going to make me happy. I mean, obviously they don't all last for a month, and they're not always under a month, right? There's been times where my happiness of going to the gym just goes throughout the whole year, and I'm just like, yeah, this is like my one place where I can truly be me and be happy and be comfortable. But so, like I said, so it comes in and goes in waves. And at work, I think I give this answer a lot, but it really is that reaction of students, or when their plans go according to whatever they had planned originally. When their events happen the way that they envisioned them, when the amount of people that they thought were going to show up actually show up, that's a really amazing feeling, because it makes me feel like, dang, like I helped them, and now they're here and they can see the potential of their successes, and this is going to be a snowball, and then we're going to continue. And so I start thinking a lot about the future, and okay, so we did this right here, how can we implement this, what we did here, to the next event, and how can I help them understand what they did here so that they can see it somewhere else? And so my brain starts racing, and I'm starting going, and I'm going, and my students can tell. But that's the most fun part for me. It's just, I like being in the back scene and just like seeing, okay, like they're smiling, that went good, that went correct. Oh, like it, they got the reaction that they wanted. That's ultimately for me the happiest I've been at work. Mm-hmm. Oh, you're muted, John.
I'm muted. I didn't even realize that. How long are we into Zoom? And I'm still apparently trying to figure it out.
In a year.
I know. Here we are. I totally lost my train of thought because of that. But I was going to say, so if there was an instance where a student, it didn't go correctly, does that conversation, is it still like a fun conversation? Because it's like, here's the things that did go well, and also these are the things that we can continue to work on. Like, is that something that you would also agree with, or what does that look like for you?
Yeah, and I'm the type of person that I like to build expectations and sort of help them realize what that expectation is going to be, so that they're not shooting for the moons and landing in Russia or something. You know what I mean? Like, I want to tell them for sure. I'm always upfront with them. I'm always like, listen, like this might not work. This might need to be changed. So you have these expectations already. And it's inevitable for something that you plan correctly 100% of the way through to fail in the end, or not necessarily fail, but go the opposite way that you thought. And in my conversations with these students, I'm always in the mindset of, they don't know that you made a mistake, right? People come to these events, they don't know that you were supposed to give them, let's say, pink wristbands versus green wristbands that you gave them out. They don't know that you were supposed to have 5 food trucks, but only 4 showed up. And so I built those expectations for them in the beginning, and sort of towards the end, if that event failed, or something went wrong with it, we're like, it's okay. Like, you still did it. You still did this right. You still did this other thing right. You still managed to pull it off. But one thing just went wrong. That doesn't make, in my eyes at least, that doesn't make you a bad student, a bad event host, a bad student leader. In my mind, it makes it's going to help you grow. It's going to help you say, okay, for next time, now I know that I can't do this, or I can do this. And this is what's going to get me the reaction that I want. And that's also a happy moment, maybe not as much as seeing them succeed, because I take that onto myself, and I'm like, damn, like how as an advisor could I have done better for them, and really deliver them what they wanted in a way that, you know, was also helpful. But then I talk to myself and I'm like, okay, well, as their advisor, you got to let them fail at some point. They got to learn that things don't go the way that they always plan them on going. And so that's really, what's the word? Like calming for me. And when I get in that headspace, because it's like, okay, like I know I did as much as I could. They did as much as they could, and it still went wrong. That's fine. Moving on, next day.
Got you. And I remember that because we had gone through that experience, specifically with the I Heart Female Orgasm when they had come to Western, and that experience of, you know, we with the university, UUB was University
Union Board.
When they usually had, you know, a couple hundred students show up, and that event we only had like 80 students show up, and it was just kind of like seeing that, like the firsthand experience of like, okay, these 80 students got a lot out of this conversation, but it just wasn't the expectation that you normally would get from that event. So
yeah, and it was, you know, it was disheartening for the students too, because you have to think they're putting their time, their passions, their thoughts into this program. And granted, they didn't build the program, right? We sourced it from a vendor, but they still put time and effort to sort of get them there. And then on top of that, you have a monetary value, right? And when it goes, you know, you don't have as an advisor, you think, dang, like what could have been done to make it better so that it makes it worth the money. But then going back to the students and not letting them see that, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how many students came as much as what they got out of it. And I think that's something that was, you know, taught to us, both you and I, John, in grad school by our professors. That was something that, you know, was really heavily taught to us. So that's something that I carry with me.
Got you. Yeah, because you can't really necessarily put that in a data sheet. You know, it can't go into an Excel document. So
I mean, it can, but
got you. Got you. So thank you. So then the third question that I have is, what makes you resilient in the face of some of the challenges that have happened over the past year? So like with budget cuts, stress of the pandemic, moving in a pandemic. We all did a lot of this during the pandemic.
Can you repeat the question again? But I'm just thinking of how I'm answering.
Yeah. So what keeps you resilient in the face of some of the challenges that have come up for you?
Yeah. I had this conversation with my boss, maybe like, I think about a month or so ago. We were doing staff evaluations for the year. And, you know, a lot of I went in there really thinking, hey, like I'm going to suck, like we're going to get, you know, meets expectations or whatever. And I'm going to do the bare minimum, and that's what's going to get me through. And, you know, after our conversation and, you know, the way that she talked about my work and the way that I, you know, arose to the challenge that she gave me constantly, it made me feel really good. And it made me reflect on how much and how many struggles I've been through. And you know, struggles can be as diminutive as something happening late to as big as, you know, I had an argument with a colleague or whatever. And I'm not saying I did, but just in general. And I think really what is just drawing those boundaries. What really got me through those points where I needed to where I needed to be resilient is just drawing those boundaries, right? It was hard for me to say from 8 to 5, that's the only time I'm working, and this is the only time I get to worry about this, because this is the only time that Prairie View is paying me to think about this. And drawing those boundaries, maybe like a month or two after getting this job, really, really helped me with that resiliency part. And I realized that because it was like I was no longer taking those negative effects of those emotions home with me, and it was no longer impacting my time, say at the gym, at home cooking with my friends and socializing on the weekends or whatever, because I made a conscious decision to leave that at work where it belonged, right? And challenges in terms of my budget cuts, you know, being upset that I can't, that, you know, our professional staff members are continuously being asked to do more with a lot less than the previous years and programs before that. And so being frustrated with that and learning how to leave that in the office, because I think it carried with me. And then I was like in the grocery store, like, oh, how am I going to pay for this? And like, well, if they cut my budget, if they cut my budget by $10,000, I can't afford this, and we can't go here, and we can't buy this, and now I can't deliver the events that I wanted to. And it was really hard, but I think it helped me, you know, sort of manage those problems and only worry about them while at school. And so that resiliency, I'm like, okay, I get 8 to 9 hours of the day to worry about it. And then we keep it pushing, we keep it moving, different day, different thing. It's almost like my students, right? I have to tell myself, hey, like, this is just another day. You got to keep on going. And drawing those boundaries really helped.
Got you. Yeah, no, because I know for a fact that most of us, when we had talked about grad school, is that the lines were blurred all the time.
Yeah.
You're in your email because you're working on homework or like sending something, but then also, you see that student email or you see that email from a supervisor and you're like, oh, I'll just respond to it now, but I will say being out as a new professional has helped you draw those boundaries, because I've experienced that as well. Like after 5, it stays,
Yeah.
and I think that's it. Even what the connection that I made with what you were talking about is that like you setting the expectations with your students and like managing those expectations, but it's also managing the expectations with yourself of like saying, if we do get a budget cut of $10,000, we sit there, we think about it, okay, we're losing $10,000, and then let's move on and like figure out new ways to do something or like reinvent, like come up with something new. So I think that's awesome, especially from one new professional to another. It's
Thank
awesome
you.
to think like that. So
no, thank you. Yeah. And I mean, specifically, I think that, I had a tough year in the beginning because as a new professional, like you said, like we have all these ideas. I wanted to change the world. I wanted to change my office. I wanted to completely redesign the way that we did things. And somebody had to come up to me and say, you need to stop. Right. And while at the moment it was like, what do you mean stop? Like, I'm gonna keep going. Like, we got to do this because blah 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 X, Y, and Z. And allowing myself to just be in that sulking point, but only during my office hours and those boundaries. It was just like, okay, next thing. All right, I sulked for a day. We can move on from it. It's next to the next event. We'll redesign whatever that may look like. So just being flexible.
Yep. No, that's the name of the game. That's the name of the game. So but so the next question that I have is for you I know you had mentioned some of these things, but what are some of the ways that you practice self-care to stay on your A game?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, gym. I have a second job, and surprisingly, you wouldn't necessarily see this as self-care because it is another job, and I am continuously to work 7 days a week. But for me, it's about this idea that at my job, I'm very, stuck in one place on the computer, maybe not standing up as much as I could. And I sort of miss the manual labor and the ability to do something, to achieve something and then gain something back from that, right? But that mentality of I'm working for my money and I'm working hard for it. That sort of mentality. And I know that it's not as much self-care because I'm still working, but it really helps me ground myself. It helps me say, okay, like I'm not useless in a sense because I am moving around and I am doing these other things and I am constantly thinking and moving, and it's monotonous. I can do it, it's almost like machinery, like scoop ice, get some coffee, do this, do that. And so I do that a lot, and I just spend time alone. I have a pool in my apartment complex and I go there, on the weekends, sit down, chill around, turn off my phone. I mean, my students can reach me whenever they want at whatever point, but I think they know that, I also deserve a weekend as much as they deserve a weekend. And so they don't. And so I'm allowed to be fun, have fun and forget about it. And it's great because I remember in grad school, because we worked so close to where we lived, it almost felt like I never left work. And it almost felt like if something were to happen, Juan lives 5 minutes away, he can just zoom on in, he can do it, whatever. And now living so far away, I live about 30 minutes away from my job now. It really, changes the game in terms of, now I feel rested. I feel like I left,
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So I know that we had talked to this a little bit beforehand about like that. It's a different type of stimulation. So like when you're at the office, like it's kind of like you're sitting down, and then you feel fulfilled, but it's not the same way that you do, like
Yeah.
you're talking about with your second job. So I think that totally makes sense. And I think self-care is, it's a very subjective thing for each individual person. It's not like a one size fits all approach to everyone. So I mean, I think that's great. If you like to work those additional hours and like say that you work 7 days a week, but it keeps you going, then
Yeah.
I think that that's perfect, you know?
Thank you.
So
And it stimulates different parts of your brain. I think as a student affairs professional, that stimulates my critical thinking and development. But I'm at Starbucks. I don't have to think about critical thinking. I'm just doing, and so it just stimulates different parts. So yeah, thank you.
Gotcha. Yeah. And the last question that I have for you is, what is one piece of advice you live by in your practice?
Before getting on here, I really thought about this, but I think the biggest one, and I did not learn it from a student affairs professional in general. Yeah, no, I didn't. Is that poor planning on your part does not equal an emergency on my part. Is that how it goes? So just basically that, poor planning, just because you poor plan doesn't mean that I got to move twice as fast just because you didn't do your job. And I'll tell you why I live by this. And it's personal. It's mostly for me. When I first started this job, deadlines of payment and deadlines of when you can submit things. And I found myself calling in a lot of favors for somebody who had been there for a month, calling people like, hey, please do me this favor. Like, I really forgot to do this. And I adopted this saying for me because it helps me keep myself accountable, right? I tell myself poor planning on my part does not mean that somebody else got to move twice as fast for me to complete the task that I neglected to do in a timely manner. And I think it's made me a better professional because I'm able to say, Juan, like, this was you, man. Like, you had nobody else had a hand in this but you. And I keep myself accountable. And I've sort of been able to progress in that. And so whenever I find myself in those situations now, I'm like, damn it, Juan, like, this is not your first rodeo. You've been doing this for a year. Like, you got to get together. And it may only happen once a month, every once in a blue moon, I forget one thing. And luckily I made a lot of connections and a lot of colleagues in my department. And, I'm a personable person. I like to meet people and I like to get to know them on a personal level. And so I've been able to build that network. And so now I'm easier to call in favors, be like, please, Miss Lily, please just approve this because I forgot. Okay.
Got you. No, I think that totally makes sense, because I think that it makes, the way that you describe that specifically is that it makes you think on like a more of a meta level. So it's not necessarily just you doing something, because like, even speaking about, I learned this week about like how our office operates when we use our professional cards, is that like it goes to me, to our administrative assistant, to the business services for our department, and then business services for the whole institution. So it's kind of like all these integral parts of like who has to do things. So like if I forget to do something, it's a whirlwind of issues, and then it becomes an issue for everyone else. So like I think that's a really great approach to have, because I think it makes you think about everything before you just say like, I need to, especially like with the programming, like I want to host this program, and it's like, okay, what are the pieces that actually are a part of this program to make it better. So I think that like even getting that outside of higher education was a perfect thing to think about. And yeah, that's awesome.
And what's funny? It's like it just happened to me, like literally maybe last week. I submitted an event proposal for our week of welcome stuff, and my direct supervisor, she's like, "Did you get an approval from this department, from this department, from this other department?" And I was like, "Yeah, like I got the approval, but like I'm not gonna send this approval until they request it from me." And so I submitted it for payment. And so this notified, because it's such a risk management thing, and notified the risk management for the entire system of Texas A&M, right? And now I had a call from the Texas A&M system risk management school, and they're like, well, did you get this approved through this, and this? And I was like, what? Look at this. I have this email right here. Here you go. And so that, it was good planning on my part, so that I didn't have to then ask for favors later on. So it was something that I did quick.
Got you. And I think even thinking about like how we're new professionals, I think there's a big difference between like learning something and then continuously doing something, like, because I think that's like, even if like you weren't Like if the A&M system was like, hey, like you need to do like all these things, and you're like, oh, good to know, won't happen again. I think
Literally.
that's critical to it, you know, because I think that we learn so much through not like, I wouldn't say failure, but just like having other people like explain like this is the reason why we have to do something and stuff like that. So I think that's
And it,
super beneficial.
yeah, and it's always like, for me at least, it's always like, okay, like you will never ever receive something from me that does not have A, B, C, and D that you have outlined that I needed to have every single time. In fact, you're probably gonna get it twice, and you're gonna get a reminder from me now.
Yeah, no, I think that's just the crossing your dotting your I's and crossing your T's.
We love to
So
do that, yes.
yeah. So, but that is all the questions that I have for you, Juan. So I just want to say thank you again for agreeing to do this and for sending me all the materials and for being here with me today. Is there any last minute things that you want to say?
Well, I just want to say thank you for inviting me on. I saw that you started this with Janessa a long time ago, and I was really jealous. And so I'm really happy that you. I'm not gonna lie, I was like, damn it, like why can't I be the first one? But now I'm here. I'm number 11, so that's two double ones.
There you go. There you go. That's positive thinking.
So no, I'm just excited and thank you for giving me this opportunity. I was a bit nervous because I was like, oh, but like I don't know what I'm going to talk about. Like, what if I ruin it? Like, I don't want to ruin his show. But it's been great, and you've been great, and it's just been great.
Gotcha.
So thank you.
Well, I hope just a reminder to all of our listeners to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, as well as follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye.